A man and a woman stand at the edge of a tree line. The air is cooling rapidly, and it looks like a simple equation. God gets angry. Humans break the rules. And the eviction notice is served. They are completely laid bare, the ultimate Gola. It feels like absolute abandonment. To the naked eye, it looks like the ancient covenant has been shredded and scattered in the dry Babylonian wind. But the prophets standing in the ashes insist on a completely different reality. Babylon is not a graveyard for the people of God. It is a forge. Without the crutch of the physical temple, they are forced to do something they have avoided for generations. They have to remember the text. In the strange, pagan streets of Babylon, removed from the political power structures of their homeland, the exiles begin to gather around the scrolls. They cling to the words of Moses and Isaiah. They begin to realize that their survival does not depend on a geographical boundary, but on a spiritual allegiance. God stripped away the walls of their comfort so they could finally feel the weight of their own compromise. The physical empire of Babylon crumbled into dust thousands of years ago, but the architecture of that exile never really disappeared. You know this architecture. You have walked these streets. If you have ever felt a low, quiet hum of dissatisfaction underneath a life that looks perfectly fine on paper, you are standing in the exact same geography. You build the career, you sign the mortgage for the house. With the heavy oak front door, you carefully curate the relationships. You stack the bricks of your own personal Eden, sealing every crack with money. And it does carry that weight of judgment on the surface. But if you look closer at the geography of the ancient Near East, or status, or the desperate approval of the people sitting across from you, you lock the gate. You sit down in the living room you designed, with your own hands. And the air still feels impossibly thin. The silence in the room presses against your eardrums. You pick up the smooth, cold glass of your phone at 2 in the morning, swiping through images of other people's gardens, hoping the suffocating grip in your chest will finally loosen. But the bread of this Babylon always tastes like ash. That persistent ache is not a psychological defect. It is the symptom of a displaced soul. You are living the Gola. God is actively stripping away the illusion that this world was ever meant to be your permanent address. Every time a romance fractures and leaves you weeping on a cold bathroom tile, every time a company downsizes and hands you a cardboard box for your desk, every time you reach the absolute summit of your goals and find nothing but freezing wind blowing across empty rock, that is, the stripping bare. That is the uncovering. He is dismantling the false temples. He is letting the walls you trust more than him collapse into dust. We spend our entire lives trying to cure our spiritual homesickness with things that were designed to expire. We ask fragile, mortal human beings to carry the weight of our divine security, and their backs break under the load. We ask bank accounts to give us the profound peace at the specific Hebrew words used to describe the leaving, at what actually happens. On the other side of the gate, you start to see something that only the presence of the Creator can provide, and the numbers on the screen just stare back, completely silent. The disappointment is not a divine punishment. It is a severe grace. God loves you too much to let you get comfortable in a land of graves. He will disrupt your counterfeit Edens every single time, because he knows they will eventually consume you. The disruption is proof that you are not forgotten. But diagnosing the exile is only half the problem. If the gate to the original garden is still guarded by a weapon of fire, and if every human attempt to build a new paradise ends in ruins, there is only one way back to the presence of God. Someone has to walk out into the absolute furthest edge of the wasteland. Someone has to step directly into the blade. A heavy, rough-hewn wooden beam drags across the dirt. The wood splinters against his torn back. Blood drips into the dry Judean soil. It is Friday afternoon. The crowds scream. The soldiers mock. The sky begins to turn violently black. Look at the specific geography of this execution. Look at where he is standing. He is not in the temple. He is not inside the holy city. He is completely outside the gates. The author of Hebrews points to this exact, easily missed detail. Jesus suffered outside the camp. That is the place of the unclean. The punishment reading completely misses. Exile is not the removal of God's presence. It is the severe grace of preventing us from ruining ourselves forever. That is the place of the leper. That is the territory of the scapegoat, driven away on the Day of Atonement. The garden gate slams shut in Genesis. The city gate slams shut in Jerusalem. Adam was driven out of the garden. Cain was driven into the field. Israel was driven into the empire. Now, the Son of God is driven into the ultimate wasteland. He is stripped bare. He is mocked by the empire. He is totally uncovered. He takes the full, suffocating weight of the garrosh. He accepts the permanent divorce. He absorbs the severing of the bond. The flaming sword from Eden flashes one final time, and he steps directly into the blade. You hear it in the desperate scream that echoes across the skull-shaped hill. My God, why have you forsaken me? That is not a momentary lapse of faith. That is the cry of the absolute exile. He is taking every human wanderer's sentence. He absorbs the eviction of the entire human race into his own physical body. The iron spikes tear through his flesh. The taste of cheap, sour wine hits his lips. His lungs collapse under the weight of the wood. The ground drinks the blood of a murdered son, exactly like it did in Genesis chapter 4. The cross is not a political execution. The real question of all these departures isn't, why did they have to leave? It's this: what is God actually protecting them from? It is the final eviction. He is exiled, so you do not have to be. He walks out into the deepest, darkest east, the place of absolute separation, the absolute absence of the Father, so that the wrath of the boundary can finally be quenched. He accepts the garrosh so that the divorce papers can be torn to shreds. For 3 days, the silence is deafening. The tomb is sealed with a massive stone. The exile feels complete. But the eastward trajectory of human history is about to violently snap, because on Sunday morning, the stone is rolled back, and an entirely new word enters the biblical vocabulary. The entire architecture of the Hebrew Bible pivots on a single concept, but our modern religious vocabulary has almost entirely ruined it. When the prophets write to the captives in Babylon, their scrolls are not just filled with diagnoses of the disease. They offer the cure. You read the heavy ink pressed into the parchment of Isaiah or Jeremiah, and you see a constant, rhythmic invitation to come back. In English translations, this invitation is usually rendered with a heavy, guilt-laden religious term: repent. You hear that word today. And you probably picture a red-faced street preacher holding a cardboard sign, or you feel the crushing weight of having to muster up enough tears to prove you are actually sorry. This matters because if we only see exile as a divine timeout, we miss the entire architecture of the biblical story. But the prophets are not speaking English. They are speaking Hebrew, and the word they use is the Hebrew verb shub. It appears over 1,000 times in the Old Testament, making it one of the most common and vital words in the ancient text. And shub is not primarily an emotional word. It is a spatial word. It is a directional word. It literally means to turn back. To return to the starting point, it is the physical act of stopping on a dirt road, feeling the sharp gravel under your sandals, realizing you are walking in the wrong direction, and pivoting 180 degrees. When Jeremiah writes in chapter 29, "I will restore your fortunes and gather you from all the nations," the verb holding that promise together is shub. I will bring you back. That spatial reality changes everything. Repentance is not an emotional apology. It is a change of direction. It is the exact opposite of the eastward trajectory. If exile is the relentless march east, away from the presence of the Creator, then shub is the conscious, deliberate march west. It is the return to the garden. It is walking back toward the flaming sword and realizing the blade has already been absorbed by the sun. The resurrection of Jesus is the ultimate cosmic shub. When he walks out of the limestone tomb into the cool, damp air of a Sunday, we miss the diagnosis of our own human condition. The feeling of displacement you might carry right now, that persistent ache in your chest that says, "Morning Garden." He is completely reversing the ancient curse. The grave is the ultimate exile, the final separation, the deepest east any human being can travel. And Christ turns around and walks right out of it. He pioneers the return. And because he broke the boundary of death itself, the way back is finally open for anyone who realizes they are living in a foreign land. You do not have to earn your way back. You just have to turn around. But what does that return actually look like when you put all the pieces of the story together? A man and a woman are driven east into the thorns, and God sews the garments that will cover their shame. A murderer is cast out into the wandering field, and God places a mark on his flesh to ensure his survival. A generation stacks baked bricks to build their own heaven, and God scatters their language to save them from their pride. A fractured nation is dragged by iron hooks into the heart of Babylon, and God strips away their temple to reveal his presence. A king is blinded and bound in heavy bronze, and a scattered remnant learns to read the ancient scrolls in the dust. A savior is dragged outside the city gates to absorb the flaming sword, and the permanent eviction of the human race is cancelled in his blood. You do not quite belong in the systems of this world. The quiet exhaustion of trying to build a home that keeps crumbling is not a dead man wakes up in the deepest exile of a limestone grave, and the path back to the garden is finally torn wide open. One trajectory, one return. But maybe the part that stays with me most is the clothing. God does not just speak the eviction notice and turn his back. He kneels in the dirt of Eden, his hands working with heavy, warm animal skins, covering the very people who just broke his heart. He clothes them for the wilderness. The provision happens before they even take their first step into the east. If you are in a season where everything you built is crumbling, if the walls of your career, your relationships, or your perfectly curated life have collapsed and left you sitting in the ash, do not assume you have been abandoned. The disappointment is not a divine rejection. It is the Golah. It is the stripping bare. The Creator loves you too much to let you get comfortable in a counterfeit Eden that will eventually consume you. He is uncovering you so you can finally realize you are living in a foreign land. He is disrupting your Babylonian peace so you will finally turn around. And may the God who has never once let a wanderer walk into the wasteland alone meet you in your exile and walk you all the way home. Psychological crisis. It was built into the text from the very first pages. You are supposed to feel homesick. To find the answer, you have to start with that very first set of footprints leaving Eden. You have to look at the weapon guarding the door, the heat of the day giving way to something sharp and unfamiliar. Behind them, the rhythmic, crackling glow of a flaming blade casts long, unnatural shadows. The text tells us in Genesis 3 that God places cherubim and a flaming sword flashing back and forth to guard the way to the tree of life. For centuries, artists have painted this scene as a violent expulsion, a divine bouncer aggressively throwing the humans out into the cold. We imagine God turning his back and locking the deadbolt. But the text does not say God abandoned them. The text says God clothed them. He took animal skins, heavy and warm, and covered their shame before they took their first step into the thorns. The clothing was provision for the exile. They are walking into the unknown, but they are not walking out of his sight. The departure is happening, but the destination is already being mapped. The destination always lies in one specific direction: east. Watch the compass of Genesis. A garden gate closes. The footprints point east. A brother bleeds in a field. The killer walks east. A society decides to make a name for itself, baking bricks in a valley to build a tower. They travel east. A nephew looks for fertile ground, pitching his tent toward a city of violence. He moves east. An empire marches through the broken walls of Jerusalem, dragging captives by heavy iron hooks in their jaws. The captives are pulled east, across the pristine soil. Ahead of them is wilderness, dirt that will only yield its fruit through sweat, thorns, and broken fingernails. They take a breath, same direction, again and again. In the ancient biblical worldview, direction is destiny. East is the land of the wanderer. East is where you go when the presence of God is no longer your center. The biblical authors are not just mapping coordinates on a globe, they are mapping the human heart. You can track the spiritual descent of humanity by the dirt under their feet. The soft, yielding soil of the garden gives way to the hard, unyielding clay of Nod. The clay is baked into rigid, lifeless bricks in Babel. The bricks are stacked into towering, inescapable walls in Babylon. The ground keeps getting harder. The air keeps getting thinner. The geography is not a historical backdrop. It is a diagnosis. Consider the men who compiled these ancient texts. They are sitting by the rivers of Babylon in the 6th century BCE. The water is dark and slow. The air smells of unfamiliar incense, roasting meat, and the overwhelming dust of a foreign empire. Their temple is reduced to ash. Their kings are blinded or dead. They hang their stringed instruments on the willow trees. They cannot sing the songs of Zion in a strange land. They are living the ultimate national nightmare. And as they put quill to parchment, recording the stories of their ancestors, they realize something terrifying. They step forward. They are moving east. It is the first departure, but it will not be the last. Their captivity is not an anomaly. It is the family tradition. Babylon is just the latest verse in a very old song. The Babylonians did not invent exile. They simply mass-produced it. Exile is the human default. We are a species obsessed with building our own Edens, and we keep getting evicted from them. We build towers of status. We build fortresses of wealth. We construct relationships that we demand to function like salvation. We curate perfectly manicured lives to convince ourselves we are back in the garden. And every time, the brick cracks. The mortar crumbles. We find ourselves outside the gate, staring at a flaming sword, wondering why we feel so desperately homesick in a house we built with our own hands. This eastward trajectory defines the whole narrative. But the pattern of exile isn't just about massive nations crossing deserts or empires clashing in the dust. It starts much smaller. It starts with a single man, a field of dirt, and a stain that will not wash out. The sun beats heavily on the unbroken soil of an open field. Just a short distance from the closed gates of Eden, a man stands over the motionless body of his younger brother. His hands are sticky and dark, and the dry earth beneath his feet is actively swallowing something it was never designed to consume. Blood. Watch the pattern. A son murders his brother in an open field, and the ground rejects him, sending him wandering further east. Cain stands in the deafening, unnatural silence of the aftermath, feeling the heavy, suffocating weight of the fracture he has just introduced into the human story. God speaks into the quiet, and his sentence strikes directly at the core of Cain's identity. Cain is a worker of the ground, a man whose hands know how to coax life from the dirt, but God declares that the ground itself, having opened its mouth to receive Abel's blood, will now refuse to yield its strength. Cain is severed from his vocation, severed from his family, and sentenced to become a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. Panic sets in. Cain realizes the terrifying vulnerability of his new reality. He complains that his punishment is heavier than he can carry, picturing the vast, lawless wilderness stretching out before him. He knows that anyone who finds him in the uncharted territories east of Eden will see an unprotected man and strike him down. He expects the immediate, unmitigated wrath of a holy God to finalize the execution, right there in the blood-stained grass. But God does something that defies every expectation of ancient justice. He places a mark on Cain. For centuries, cultural imagination has turned this into a brand of shame, a visible curse. A scarlet letter carved into his flesh. A massive, prosperous kingdom is fractured. And generations later, millions of people are marched away in heavy iron chains to warn the world that a monster is approaching. But if you read the narrative carefully, the provision serves the exact opposite purpose. God places the mark on him specifically so that no one who finds him will kill him. The mark is not a target painted on his back. It is a shield placed over his life. Even in the first act of human violence, when murder fractures the family of God for the first time, the divine response is not immediate annihilation. It is exile, accompanied by a profound, unmerited preservation. Cain walks away into the land of Nod, a geographic location whose name literally translates to wandering. But he walks away into the east, carrying the active protection of the very creator he just offended. He is cast out, yet he is simultaneously covered. The departure is a severe consequence, but his survival is guaranteed by grace. There is a mystery hiding in this tension. To understand how God can cast someone out while still holding on to them, you have to look at the language of the eviction itself. Because in the original Hebrew text, there are two different ways to talk about being sent away, and the difference between them changes how you read every tragedy in the Bible. Look at the text in Genesis 3. Look again at Genesis 4. Adam breaks the command. Cain sheds blood. A newly liberated nation wanders in a desert of red rock and burning sand for 40 years. In both chapters, your English Bible says they are driven out. The Hebrew word used in both places is garash. It is a sharp, aggressive verb. It means to thrust out, to cast away, to forcefully expel. In ancient Near Eastern legal texts, garash is the technical term for a permanent divorce. It is the severing of a bond, the tearing of a contract. Adam experiences garash. Cain experiences garash. The gate slams shut. But fast forward centuries later, the nation of Israel repeats the pattern on a massive scale. They chase foreign gods. They oppress the vulnerable. They ignore the prophets. The Babylonian army surrounds Jerusalem. The heavy stone walls are battered down. You expect garash. You expect the permanent divorce. But the prophets use an entirely different word. When Jeremiah writes a letter to the captives, ink pressed into rough parchment, he addresses them as the Golah. The Golah is the biblical noun for the exiles, but its root is the Hebrew verb galah, and galah does not mean to thrust away. It means to uncover, to strip bare, to reveal what is hidden. Every time a major fracture happens in the biblical story, someone is packed up and sent away. If seeing the biblical text open up like this is shifting how you read it, you're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe. Because every week we dig into the ancient vocabulary that changes everything. So the nation is laid bare. The prophets are making a profound linguistic claim. Babylon is not garash. God is not divorcing his people. Babylon is Golah. God is uncovering them. He is stripping away their layers of false security. He is removing the physical temple. He is removing the monarchy. He is removing the land itself. He takes away everything they use to fake a relationship with him. When you strip away the religious furniture, you see the actual heart. The national exile is not a rejection. It is a revelation. It exposes exactly what the nation loves more than their creator. But to see what that exposure actually looks like on the ground, you have to watch the walls of Jerusalem fall. It is 506 BCE, and the sky over Jerusalem is choked with thick, oily, black smoke. The magnificent cedar beams of Solomon's temple wood that once smelled of sweet resin and sacred incense are collapsing into a mountain of white-hot ash. Most people assume these stories are just historical records of punishment. You read the garden narrative, the Babylonian captivity, or the wandering in the wilderness. You can hear the deafening crack of stone foundations giving way, mixed with the frantic, overlapping cries of a city that has finally run out of time. The siege is over. King Zedekiah tries to flee under the cover of darkness, slipping through a breach in the wall toward the desert plain. But the Babylonian soldiers run him down near Jericho. They drag him before King Nebuchadnezzar, force him to watch his own sons die, and then gouge out his eyes. His final visual memory is the death of his legacy. Then, they bind him in heavy bronze shackles. They round up the brightest minds, the skilled artisans, the priests, and the nobility, and they force them to walk. The long march east begins again. A century earlier, The northern kingdom of Israel fell to the terrifying war machine of Assyria, scattered, deported, and swallowed entirely by foreign nations. Now, Judah faces the same bitter reality. For hundreds of miles, the line of captives trudges through relentless, burning desert wind, their bare feet tearing on sharp gravel. They finally arrive in a metropolis designed to overwhelm the senses. Babylon is a suffocating labyrinth of towering ziggurats, massive, blue-glazed walls depicting golden dragons, and statues of gods that demand absolute submission. Everything that gave the Israelites their identity is gone. No king, no throne, no altar, no sacrifice. The land they believed was an unconditional guarantee has violently vomited them out.